Hi there, my name is Jamil Dabir, and in this video, we're going to be learning about macros using Microsoft Excel. Before we get started, I'm just going to explain what macros are. Macros basically allow you to record a series of operations and then to re-execute those operations. So in simpler terms, it's basically going to allow you to automate really simple, repetitive tasks with Microsoft Excel. I'm going to give a very brief warning at the start of this video. There's going to be a very small amount of Visual Basic scripting in this video. I would just say not to get discouraged by it or to be intimidated by it. We're basically just going to be deleting a couple lines of code. There's nothing really fancy going on. So with that being said, let's dive into the overview for this and just see what we're going to be looking at. So in this video, there's going to be 3 different exercises we're going to do. They're all very similar. So we're basically just setting up keyboard shortcuts, and I'm going to set up keyboard shortcuts for merging cells, for setting a border outline, and for setting an inside and outline border outline. The reason I chose these exercises is because I've done quite a bit of Excel work in the past, and I find these are features that I use fairly often. And once we get into the video, you'll see they're kind of buried within Excel. They're a little not hard to dig out, but they take quite a few mouse clicks, quite a few steps. And I feel like I'd be a little more productive if I had these features set up as keyboard shortcuts. So with that being said, let's hop over to Excel and get started. So we've got a series of helpful tips here in order to get yourself started and set up using macros. So the first thing it says is to go to File, Options, Customize Ribbon, and Enable Developer Mode. I've already got Developer Mode enabled, but I'll show you how to do that anyways. Go File, Options, Customize Ribbon, and then Developer Mode here, there's a checkbox. So if we uncheck it, see that I just lost Developer Mode. And now we will put it back on. Customize Ribbon, Developer Mode, it is enabled. The next step it says is to save your spreadsheet as macro enabled. Go Save As, Desktop, and we're going to change this save type as to an Excel macro enabled workbook. And let's go save. There we go. Step 3 is to record the macro. So how do we do that? We go to this developer tab that we just had set up, and we go to record macro. So the macro name is merge underscore cells. You may have noticed that I used an underscore between the words merge and cells. That's because if you put a space in Excel, Visual Basic, it's not going to accept it. So you have to use an underscore or don't use any spaces at all. For our keyboard shortcut, question 1 asked us to use Control-Shift-M. So we just put a capital M in here, and that gives us Control-Shift-M. Description, it's only going to really show up within the script, but it's nice to have good documentation for your code. So we'll call this description merges selected cells. You might think that including the keyboard shortcut would be a good idea for the script. It actually doesn't matter. You'll see that it gets added in automatically once we hop over to Visual Basic. So simple, straightforward description should be good enough for now. Let's hit OK. So we are recording a macro now. So let's select a bunch of cells. Let's right click, go to Format Cells. In the Alignment tab, we're going to click Merge Cells. So we just merge the cells and stop recording. Okay, so one problem that's going to come up, and I'll tell you this right now, and I'll even demonstrate it to you, is that when you record a macro, it records exactly what you did. So the challenge with that is I have merged together cells B12 through E18. What this macro does is it merges together the cells B12 through E18. So I'll unmerge them. we go. Let's try. I'll click over here, and maybe, my intention is I want these cells to become merged. Oh, look at that. It merged together the cells B12 through E18. So let's unmerge those. And this is why I kind of warned you at the beginning. We'd be hopping into a little bit of code, but this is a pretty easy fix. So we click the macros button here. We've got our merge cells. So this is a Visual Basic script now based off the macro that we just created. So we're going to go edit. So, and as I mentioned earlier, the keyboard shortcut is right here. Our description's right there. And here's our problem. Range B12 through E18 dot select, and then it says with selection, do all of these things. The most notable, most important one I would say is that dot merge cells equals true. That means we're merging the cells together. So let's just delete this one line of code. Delete it. Let's hit save. Okay, save that. Let's close it. Now back in our workbook, let's pick some random cells, do Control-Shift-M. Look at that, they merge. I can pick these cells over here, Shift-M, they merge too. Okay, so that's enough of that. Let's unmerge these cells and let's move on to the next question. It's going to be very similar. We're going to set up a macro to allow the user to set up an outline border using the keyboard shortcut Control-Shift-O. So we start by hitting record macro. Call this outline cells. Control-Shift-O. This book macro to outline cells. Period. Okay. So now we are in recording mode. Let's select some cells, right click, format cells. Under the border tab, we're going to click outline, click OK, and we will stop recording our macro. Let's click the script. Let's take a look at it. Outline cells, edit. And we have the same problem here, this range. So let's just delete that range. Let's save this. Let's close it. Select some cells. Oh, don't have to right click anything anymore. Almost forgot. Control-Shift-O. There we go. We've got an outline. Let's do another one. Control-Shift-O. Okay. Looks like it's working. Let's remove that. There's no formatting there now. Let's go to question 3. Set up a macro that will allow the user to set up an inside and outline border using the keyboard shortcut Control-Shift-I. So record a macro. So we'll call this inside outline border. So we just put a Shift-I in here. So that gives us Control-Shift-I. Description creates a border and inside borders for a selection of cells, period. Okay. So now the macro is recording. And we would go to right click, format cells, border, inside, outline. You can see here, this is what we want. We have none, so we'll start over, click outline, click inside. That gives you the preview. That looks like what we want. Click OK. And now we stop recording. Go to macros. Inside outline border. Let's see if we can change the name here. Oops. Okay. Well, we've got a typo there, but let's go with it. Macros, edit. And we will just delete this first line of code. That's the one specifying the range. And we want to be able to put in our own range. So we delete that. Save it, and close that. So now if we select over here, Control-Shift-I, there we go. We have an outline border and an inside border. Control-Shift-I, an outline border and inline border. Okay, so let's save the spreadsheet and let's hop over to our PowerPoint to conclude. So in conclusion, macros are helpful and they're capable of doing a lot more than what was shown in this straightforward demonstration. I set these keyboard shortcuts up because I believe that they would be really helpful to me. One of the more enjoyable parts of working with Excel is kind of creating and setting up your own custom spreadsheets and reports. And these keyboard shortcuts would be really useful to someone who's starting from scratch on a new spreadsheet. Macros can also be used for kind of more involved automation tasks and I would say more exciting things than what was shown here. And kind of sky's the limit. You could start learning Visual Basic, or you could even just use that record feature and do much more than what was shown in this simple demonstration. And just going to conclude this video with a little bit of a warning. Macros and automation scripts, these kinds of things can create drastic increases in your productivity. But what I would say is to not 100% trust them. Kind of as I demonstrated in this video, your macros are going to do exactly what you told them to do. So if there's an extra column or two in your data set for some reason and you run a macro, it might be configured for a previous data set. It might not run properly. Or if there's more records in your data, again, they might be out of the range of the macro and they might not actually work properly. So I would say be careful when you're creating your macros and be careful when you execute them. And if you have the time, take a little time just to double check what you've done, because errors can be kind of costly or embarrassing, that type of thing, and best to avoid them. You want these tools to help you and to not end up working against you. So with that being said, thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I hope that you've learned something useful.